Okay, I'm not sure if anyone else out there will find this story very creepy, but it's certainly the scariest thing that's ever happened to me, so I might as well share. At this point, I like to think that I've been around long enough to realize that there's more crazy crap happening in the world than their explanations, and I'd say this falls into that heading. If anyone out there can actually explain everything away, please do. It would make me feel a whole lot better about the situation. A few years back, I was enlisted in the US Coast Guard, hoping to save lives, stop bad guys, and just be an all-around hero, the kind of mindset that most younger guys have at that time. The reality of what I'd gotten myself into was a lot more frustratingly mundane than what I'd hoped for, and consisted of a lot more cleaning/field daying, running basic training drills, and just constantly trying to keep various qualifications up to standard, as well as gain new ones. When this story took place, I was still pretty new to the entire thing. I was in for less than a year, and I'd been stationed at a little small boat station on the coast of Maine. I'd grown up in a small fishing town, myself, so I was used to having nothing to do but work, drink, and trying to convince the least unattractive girl at the bar to go home with you. I was hoping for something a lot more exciting, some hotbed of activity like the coast of Florida. That's pretty much the reason why I always volunteered to get underway whenever the boat was going out for literally anything. It didn't hurt that because I was still new and not actually boat crew qualified, that all the extra time helped me with all my required knowledge, as well as making me look good in front of command. So that day we were going to get underway to practice some beaks drills, some basic boat crew stuff for me, and generally just spend most of the day out on the water making sure we were using some hours. It was a Saturday, so the command was nowhere in sight, and the OOD was a second-class bosun's mate named Rivard. He decided it was better to get a few of us out on the 47-foot motor lifeboat than just doing some sleep-inducing classroom training. Bump. So, the crew consisted of myself, who was a break-in, BM2 Rivard, acting engineer was a third-class MK named Ford, a chick BM3 named Brown, another non-rate break-in named Kovacs. All of them were pretty good guys and dependable sailors, so it was a good crew on a good day with little wind and no predicted bad weather, even if it was unseasonably cold for November. What a lot of people don't seem to realize is that there is a lot more coastline out there considered haunted than they think. Hell, there's probably just as much of it out there as there are haunted houses or whatever, between all the harbors and rocky coastal areas. Think about it, if a house gets haunted because something bad happened and people died there, then what about all the countless lives lost in a watery horror over the centuries with downed vessels, battles, mutinies, pirating, storms, and everything else? One stretch of coast could potentially have seen more death and murder than any given area of the land it surrounds. There's no shortage of tall tales to be told if you can find an old salt talkative, or drunk, enough to really open up. Not all of them about the other side either. There have always been tales of things out in the deeper waters. Everything from a kraken to serpents, to mermaids, and sirens. And the important thing about stories like those is that they were all based on some little bit of truth. A kraken can be replaced with a colossal squid and the story wouldn't skip a beat. I'd heard stories about there being a place in our hour that was supposedly a place where all of the above had happened. It was a small natural cove that couldn't have been more than a mile or two square. Everyone at the station had heard something along those lines, but hardly anyone actually bought into it. Mostly we'd just jokingly bring it up in a mock spooky voice when a crew was about to get underway. Just basic screwing around with each other. Nothing ever actually happened in the history of the area and we didn't expect anything to. Which is why BM2 Rivard decided we should live dangerously, as he put it, and head out that way for some of our training. The cove was a little ways out, about 45 minutes one way. On the ride out we pretty much just joked around and had fun with going over some basic book knowledge. The BM2 was laid back like that. It was pretty chilly out, about 42 degrees with a water temp about the same or a little lower, so we were in out full dress suits, which made it a little harder to move around, but it did make sure we didn't have to worry much about the chill in the air. Anyway, when we reached the mouth of the cove, Ford threw the lift ring off the side and made a mock scream for help. Looked like we'd started man overboard drills. It was my job to maintain visual of the ring and keep shouting its location in relative degrees until the boat could swing around and come in for a pickup. But it was just a drill, so I was trying to have fun with it, so after about the 5th time I yelled out a position, I turn back to look at BM2 and say, "You get that yet?" in a sarcastic tone, but when I turned back around, the ring was gone. It just wasn't there anymore. Now, these things are designed to be seen. Not only is the ring bright orange, but it has a floating LED light set to flash so many times per second connected to it with a bit of bright yellow line. If you lose it for a second, it's not hard to find again. Nor was there much wind at all at the time, so it couldn't have really gotten very far from where it was. The water was pretty calm for the ocean. So after a few seconds of not being able to see the ring and not yelling out any location, Kovacs comes over and asked what was up, if I was trying to piss someone off with not taking this seriously at all. So I tell him I lost the ring, and I shout back at BM2 that I lost visual on the ring. Then after a few minutes, both Kovacs and I still can't find it. The rest of the crew comes up to see if we're blind or just screwed, but they obviously can't find it either. I tell them I saw it perfectly 1 second, then when I turned around I just lost visual completely, but they all thought I was lying and that I must have never had a visual and wanted to make myself look less bad if I said I was paying attention at one point. Even BM2 Rivard didn't seem to believe me, saying that life rings don't just sink, that they're actually made to do the exact opposite, and that I'd probably have to explain to the XPO why R47 is missing a ring now. I called bullshit on that, but he didn't want to hear it and just wanted to get on with the training. I was pretty pissed at the fact I was basically getting in trouble for lying, so I didn't really notice at first the slight change in the sky. Kovacs asked me if I noticed how the clouds seemed to be getting a bit darker as we went into the cove, but I told him there isn't supposed to be any rain or snow or anything, so it's probably just a little overcast that'll probably let up in a bit. I don't know, man. Isn't overcast normally more just gray? He had a point. The clouds did seem darker, more like a thunderhead in color, but like every cloud was a mini thunder cloud. I told him he's just letting the stupid stories about this place get to him. What are you, some kid afraid of bedtime stories? Asking that kind of shut him up about it, but between the clouds and losing a life ring out of nowhere, I had to admit I might have been feeling a little creeped as well. So anyway, we were in the cove with Ford and Brown having me practice working the tow bit, and Kovacs was with BM2 going over the NAV equipment and piloting the boat. The sky had stayed that unsettling blackish color, and I could feel a weird, I guess you just have to call it a feeling in the air. Like something wasn't quite right, but there was nothing obviously wrong at the same time. The only thing I could compare it to is if you've ever been standing outside during the eye of a storm. I saw Brown shiver a little and swore, following it up with the rhetorical question about wasn't it supposed to be good weather today. Being one of the new guys, I didn't want to let that go. I always get ragged on and I needed to give my share back when I had the chance. I didn't take you for the damsel in distress type. You letting some clouds and scary stories get to you now? She shot me one of those sarcastic grimaces people give and shoved me in the arm. Just at that time, though, the engines jerked to a complete stop. Just as she shoved me, there was a heart-sinking grinding noise, and the sudden jerking of the boat mixed with the shove was almost enough to send me over the taffrail. The thing is though, that while I was leaning over the rail, thinking I was about to go over, I could have sworn that I saw a face just under the water. It was so quick that I almost thought I didn't see anything, but I definitely saw what I knew was a pale face, with eyes as black as the clouds were becoming. I was taken aback and still staring into the water when Brown came over and grabbed my arm and asked if I was okay, and said we need to go meet up with BM2. I was a little shaky in my response, but now that my nerves were calming down from almost falling in, I realized that I had just seen my own reflection in the water, and that it wasn't anything more than that. Mentally scolding myself for being so stupid and quick to assume, I went with Brown to muster up with everyone else. Ford had already gone down into the engine compartment to see what was going on, while the rest of us were in the cabin with BM2. So far no one knew why the boat stalled, but there was some more good news to go with what we already knew. All of the electronics died when the engines went. Plotter, radios, everything. At first I thought we were screwed and couldn't contact the station, but I remembered that probably all of us had our cell phones on us, even if we weren't supposed to. So I asked the BM2 if he'd called in about our situation out here yet, and sort of gave a short chuckle and told everyone to check their phones or anything else electronic we might have. Well, that sent an alarm through me and I knew what I'd see before I took my phone out. It was dead. Well, great. I'm super glad this is happening. I had to comment. BM2 told me to cut that shit and to make ready the anchor. He said that he'd just done an ops and position check less than 10 minutes before, so they won't even try to contact us for another half hour, which means it'll be up to a few hours before anyone gets out here to pick us up. I made my way forward to the bow and started rigging the anchor with some line. I toss the anchor over and start paying out line, and I hear what sounds like something swimming along the surface of the water. I stop with the line and do a quick look around me, and I only see small wakes around the boat but nothing else, no seal or anything like I expected. I'm starting to feel pretty eerie at this point, so I just want to finish anchoring and get back off the bow, when the line I'm holding is tugged from my hands. It was just a quick jerky tug, enough to make me wonder what the hell just happened when the rest of the line starts getting pulled into the water really fast. It's going too fast and I'm so freaked and confused that most of the rest of it's gone before I can even think to move. I managed to wrap the end of it around the Samson post and throw on a few figure eights when whatever was pulling us ran out of line. There was a sickening lurching noise as the entire boat got jerked bow first at a 45-degree angle downward. Once again, I almost went over. At that point I'm like, forget this, and scramble my ass off the bow, but I did notice the Samson post is all bent to hell now before I'm off there. The sky's pretty much back now in the cove, but there's still daylight somehow. Kind of like the opposite of a sun shower. All I could think at the time was that they used to call sun showers the devil beating his wife, and what the hell would call this? So I go into the survivors compartment where everyone's gathered, and I'm just in time to have missed Ford's rundown of the engines but hear him complaining about us playing music at a time like this. Brown asked him what the hell he was going on about, that we didn't even have anything electronic working to play music with, but Ford was still going, bull. I know you were playing some kind of music, I could hear it down in the engines. Just then everyone noticed I was there and BM2 wanted to know exactly what the hell happened while I was up there. I told him exactly what happened, and twice that day I was called a liar. Screw it, I said, let's go up there and I'll show you I'm not lying. And lo and behold, there was the post, all bent and messed up with barely any line left on board to secure the anchor. BM2 got a kind of worried look on his face, that matched everyone else around me. I heard the sound of swimming again. This time I didn't turn to try to see anything. I just waited a second and asked if anyone else heard it this time. But Ford cut off any response with loudly telling everyone he can still hear the goddamn music, like someone singing long notes, not even having much of asshole tune. We all kind of look at each other for a second before Brown says, MK3. There isn't any music. No one hears anything just as he starts to say bullcrap again, wham. The boat rocked. We all look at each other, scared crapless. Wham again. We all come to the same conclusion and book it the hell back indoors to the survivors compartment. As we were scrambling along the side of the boat, one more wham and Kovacs almost fell over, but Brown grabbed him and steadied him. Once we were all indoors, the pounding stopped. After a minute or two of silence waiting for it to happen again, Kovacs says, okay, everyone realizes that was something hitting us. Intentionally. Right? BM2 tells him to shut up and that we don't need anyone to make things worse right now. He does say that there's clearly something up right now and that we need to take the right precautions. He told Ford to go up and check the anchor line and make sure it's even a little secure, and for the rest of us to prep some pyro. He's going to check the radios one more time, and when they still don't work, we'll need to send off some flares. So Brown, Kovacs, and I break out the pyro kit and start going over it all, making sure it's all still good. It obviously was, we just needed something to occupy ourselves. Brown asked me what I think is going on. I tell her I have no idea, but I've got the worst feeling right now. That things might a lot worse before they get better, you can feel it in the air. BM2 comes back and says everything's still shot just like he thought. He told me to up and get Ford, because it should not take that long to check on a line. I had to agree, he's been up there way too long unless something was up. I called his name as I was coming up to the bow, but when I got there he wasn't up there. I thought that was weird, but that maybe he just went around the other side as I was coming up. So I circle back around and check for him on the fantail and didn't see him. I get into the survivors compartment with everyone else and he isn't there, so I ask if he's in the engine room. BM2 asked me what I'm talking about. Didn't I find him on the bow? At that point I realized things had just gotten worse and tell everyone to go topside because we must have a man overboard. We all rush up and start yelling his name and looking for any movement in the water. BM2 has the binoculars out and starts doing a search for Ford. After close to 15 minutes we didn't find anything more than we had before we started searching. BM2 is clearly frustrated and pissed, started blaming me for wasting everyone's time because he's not in the water. I tell him that there's nowhere else he could be, because if he went into the engines he would have seen him himself, and if he were in the cabin bridge, I would have seen him when I went around. He just continued going off, saying that Ford was wearing bright freaking orange in an inflatable PFD, he didn't just sink. At the point I remembered the anchor line and my stomach turned. I thought to myself, no, he didn't just freaking sink. Not on his own. But BM2 just went for the pyro saying something like screw this. And fired off a parachute flare. I was left standing there, putting things together in my head. The face I thought I saw, the anchor line being pulled away from me, the whatever it was ramming our hull. And the sound of something swimming. The same sound, I realized then, that I could still hear now. Something was going on here, and it was more than just ghost stories and weird feelings. Something was here with us, something was in the water. And it wasn't exactly hiding. I snapped up what you all would refer to as a basic flare, the kind they show in the movies that you just hold and wave around while it burns. I told the BM2 and everyone else to come with me over to the taffrail and just watch. I dropped the flare in the water so the burning end was facing us as it went. It went a bit more slow than I anticipated, but within a minute or so we couldn't see the light from it anymore. Nothing. Quickly, I grabbed another one and did the same thing. Kovacs started to ask what I was doing, but I said to just shut up and watch, because the sound of swimming was still there. And then, just before the light faded, we saw a shadow swim over the light. It was big enough to eclipse almost the entire time the flare was sinking just by swimming by. We all backed the hell up and went down into the compartment. Everyone was scared, but BM2 looked like he was scared crapless, like his skin had turned the same shade as a piece of drawing paper. He just kept whispering, "We can't be here, we have to go, we need to leave, we can't be here anymore," and other things similar to that. I didn't disagree with him, either. The first thing I thought of to do was to cut the anchor line. I'd rather drift aimlessly than have a physical tie to whatever was down there, not to mention continue to be a sitting duck. BM2 had clearly gone bye-bye. So I told Kovacs and Brown what I'd planned to do and for them to sit tight. I'd be right back. I only had my small boat crew knife with me, so I knew it might take a minute or two to completely cut the anchor loose. So, I went up to the bow as fast as I could and went to work cutting us loose from whatever was there with us. I was about halfway through the line when wham! We were hit again, dammit. It's like whatever's down there knows when we're vulnerable. Wham again, and I still had a way to go before I was done. Wham! They were getting more frequent now and more forceful. That last one rocked me back on my heels. Almost done now, just a few sec dash, wham wham. 2 right in a row. Damn. Almost there, wham. Again, but I was done now. We were loose and I could book it back to the compartment, just need to make it past the side of the boat and wham. I was in the water. 3rd time's the charm. As soon as I was in, I realized I could hear music now, too. It sounded like someone singing long, tuneless notes, like if a person were to try to sing a whale's song. When I saw it, I was out of my mind terrified. It was something just below the surface, not quite breaking the water. The only coherent thought I can remember right then was confident, and in hindsight, that was because whatever was coming towards me seemed to actually be confident. It was taking long, serpentine strokes getting to me. Again, in hindsight, things like a shark or anything else wouldn't take its time, it would go right for you. Whatever this was playing. After a second I was clear-headed enough to start thinking, please be a shark, oh god, please be just a shark or porpoise or a shark, oh god, what is it? It was about a meter away from me when I felt something strong pull me while I remained helpless and screaming. And then I was back on the deck of the 47. Soaking wet but alive. Apparently when the pounding started again, Brown and Kovacs came up to make sure I was okay and saw me fall in. They were just quick enough to pull me back up before whatever was in the water got to me. And I did make sure to ask them if they saw the same thing I did. They both got real quiet but didn't say no. After that we all hunkered down in the survivors' compartment. BM2 looked a little better but he was still clearly out of it. It turns out that last pounding actually did us a favor and ended up inadvertently pushing us toward the mouth of the cove, and not long after that the rescue crew found us. We were all shaken pretty badly and not really able to tell the rescue crew where Mk3 Ford was. All we could do was convince them that he was not in the cove. Not to go back into it to look for him. The ride back was quiet, uneventful, and pensive. I did manage to ask BM2 Rivard something when I noticed he was back with us again. I asked him what it was he saw that made him lose it like he did. He looked me dead in the eye without wavering. He said when whatever it was swam over the flare, he saw its fin. Only it wasn't a fin, because fins aren't long and slender. Fins don't end in 5 fingers, like whatever he saw had. We never found any trace of Ford.
Make it up to you. By finishing the job. This happened last year, after my birthday. I turned 27 on November last year. Family decides to take, I had no say, it was a forced decision, me to the beach 2 days after my birthday. All my family loves the sea, I'm the only one that does. My mother, 2 sisters, and 3 brothers came. They have a crappy motorboat docked on the shore that my brother rented. I get basically dragged onto it. Mother stays on the sand with my youngest brother and sister. My brother then starts it up and drives off into nowhere. I get seasick very easily, so I'm feeling horrible on that boat and there's nothing I can do about it because noon gives a crap. Fall into a nauseous sleep. Wake up underwater. First thought is that my siblings threw me off to mess with me. Swim up to the surface, I was really deep underwater somehow. Can't see or hear the boat anywhere. Dread begins to fill me when I realize I'm in the middle of the ocean with no idea of where shore is. Panic for a bit. Extremely scared of the ocean for reasons many would understand. After a while I accept my fate and wait for death to reach me. Float face up. Can't remember how long I was floating along, I just know it was a long while. Get the nauseous feeling of seasickness. Don't remember when I was placed back on the boat. It's late at night when I realize what's going on. I'm laying on my back. My sister is crying, one of my brothers is checking vitals or something, I don't freaking know, and my brother is driving the boat with a stern look. Turns out they had forgotten all about me for 9 damn hours, panicked when they realized I was gone and found me face up on the water with a lifeless look in my eyes. It still scares me to think what would have happened if I hadn't have been found. My birthday is coming up soon. MFW, there has been talk about making it up to me by doing the same thing. All my family loves the sea, I'm the only one that doesn't.
So I guess it's time to drop this one. Been saving it for a while. Mood is right. Thread is spooky. Be my grandfather. World War II Gato class submarine crewman. Sub is out on patrol east of Japan somewhere. Hunting some smallish Japanese Coast Guard ships. Everyone is deathly silent, so as not to give away position to listening ships. Sudden everyone hears whispering in Japanese. Obviously nobody could translate. He said it sounded like a young man's voice, but some other voices, women and men, were whispering under the main voice in unison. Suddenly the electricity goes out. Absolutely dark. The whisper rises to a yell, then a scream. Screaming stops, electricity comes back on. Everyone scared crapless. Then everyone hears a long scraping all the way down the hull, from bow to stern, as if fingernails were trying to rip the metal hull apart. Keep in mind they are probably 200 feet deep ATM. A week passes. They have sunk 2 small merchant ships and are headed back to refuel and get more torps. He says they all hear quiet singing in Japanese, then something begins tapping on the hull, to the beat of the singing. I showed him the Twinkle Twinkle Little Star song from Dead Space and he says it was almost exactly like that except in Japanese. Some of the crewmen faint. Granddad said he felt extremely nauseous at this point. One of the officers has a heart attack. He says he can't really explain the tension or fright in those moments, but he has never been more scared in his life. He was trapped in a metal box, hundreds of feet below the surface, tormented by Japanese water spirits, his words not mine. Once they were out of Japanese waters, they surfaced for air and let the crew stretch out. On the hull at the base if the conning tower is a line of Japanese characters. Some crewmen copy it on paper and translate it. Translate it into, black water, black ship, black souls, black curse. Says there were 4 parallel scratches along the starboard side, bow to stern.
In a private terminal at the port of Boston there is a houseboat. This houseboat has been anchored there, permanently, for at least 50 years. The eccentric owner has maintained all fees and taxes and is in good standing with the port authority. Still, even if the owner wasn't financially responsible, no one would ask them to depart. Despite the owner's friendly, hospitable, if odd nature, there is a persistent air of unease around the boat and the area of the port surrounding. Very few people have taken the owner up on offers of hospitality, but those who do recount a wholly unbelievable tale. When you step into the houseboat, it's as if you're sent backwards 50 years in time. Looking out windows depicts a cityscape of antiquity, and the television receives live broadcasts of programs of the era, including news programs. If you look out the open door, you see the city as it stands today. When the door closes, you can see the 50-year-old skyline through the port opening. Some visitors who spend time with the owner notice something particularly disturbing, an almost uncanny resemblance to their host, despite obvious age differences. Though this is odd, the owner is friendly and trustworthy, ignoring the air of unease most feel, so it isn't surprising if casual friendships build between a guest and the proprietor. All this would, of course, be very strange and worthy of note, but dismissed as some form of elaborate hoax or illusion, if it weren't for one additional detail. Whenever someone elects to spend the night in this houseboat after an evening of conversation and a few drinks, they are never heard from again. When the guest awakens in the morning, the owner is nowhere to be found, and suddenly, the city skyline never changes back to its contemporary appearance when exiting the boat. Under the bed there is a briefcase full of $100 bills with a letter stapled to a list. The letter simply reads, "You have 50 years to follow these instructions if you wish to free yourself from this hell. The clock is ticking. Get to work. Capture, guards scare you."
Alright, I guess I'll post a story or two if that's fine. This one obviously isn't mine, but is a retelling of the Pensacola sea serpent encounter. I'm gonna do it in Greentext, cause I like Greentext. March 24th, 1962, Pensacola, Florida. 5 teens want to go freediving off the wreck of the USS Massachusetts. The 5 teens, all male, are Eric, 16, Warren, 17, Larry, 15, Brad, 14, and finally, Edward McCleary, 16, who is the one recounting the story. The USS Massachusetts is about 2 miles off the coast, on a sandbar. Because of this, part of the wreck can be seen sticking out of the water. They grab a raft, change into their bathing suits, spot the part of the wreck sticking out of the water, and start paddling towards it. The water is extraordinarily cold. On their way to the ship, a storm starts coming in. They decide to paddle back to shore, but they instead get washed out to sea. They tried to wave down a boat for help, but the boater was apparently challenged and just waved back. They instead decide to tie onto a nearby buoy and wait out the storm. Their boat capsizes, but they manage to flip it over and climb back on. They wait out the storm, the sea finally becomes calm. Everything goes completely silent, and a heavy fog rolls in. They all sit there and make small talk for a bit, waiting for the fog to disperse so they can paddle back. The water around them becomes much warmer. Larry hears something in the distance, and tells everyone to shut up and listen. Suddenly, the smell of dead fish hits them, and they hear a massive splash. The waves from this splash were big enough to break over the side of their raft. Through the fog, they see something that looked like a 10-foot tall telephone pole emerge from the water, straighten up, pause for a moment, then arch and dive back underwater. They all get confused, especially being that they didn't even properly see the thing due to the fog. McCleary jokes that it was a sea monster. Why would I say that? PNG. They start hearing a high-pitched hiss, which sounds like it is getting closer and closer with each succession. They all understandably panic. They decide to put on their diving fins, and jump into the water. This part sounds a bit odd, being that it seems like no sane human would jump into the water with a supposed sea monster. McCleary later justified this, claiming they were all terror-stricken, and feeling the need to escape, decided to leave the tiny raft. McCleary tells everyone to swim for the wreck of the USS Massachusetts. Behind them they hear more splashing and that weird hissing sound. The fog starts to clear up, but the water starts to get colder, rougher, and night starts to fall. Every once in a while, Eric would call back to make sure everyone was fine. Eventually, they hear a scream lasting about 30 seconds from behind them. They hear Warren call out, help me, it's got Brad. I've got to get out of here." Warren's voice was suddenly cut off by his own screams. Everything goes silent. They can't find Warren and Brad. Not able to do anything, the three remaining boys continue swimming. After a while, McCleary looks around, and realizes he can't see Larry. They dive down, trying to search for him underwater. They can't find him. They decide to keep on swimming. Eric starts sinking due to cramps, so McCleary grabs onto him and they swim together. It's the dead of night now, and everything is pitch black. Nearby lightning lights up the area, and they find that they are pretty close to the USS Massachusetts. A giant wave separates the two, but both keep swimming for the ship. As lightning lights up the area once again, McCleary sees the telephone pole-like figure break the water, open its mouth, and dive on top of Eric, dragging him down into the sea. McCleary describes the creature as having a neck that was about 12 feet long, brownish-green, and smooth-looking. The head of the creature looked like that of a sea turtle, only elongated and with the crap ton of small sharp teeth. He did not see any fins on the creature's sides, but claimed that he saw a dorsal fin on its back as it was diving. The eyes looked green with oval pupils. McCleary pulls himself onto the wreck of the ship, and stays there for a while. There is no sign of Eric. He eventually works up the courage to get back into the water and swim the 2 miles to shore. He claims that he did not remember swimming back to the shore, but instead imagined himself peacefully sinking to the bottom of the sea and laying on the soft sand. Interestingly enough, this sort of blissful peace is also reported by surviving drowning victims. Eventually, he finds himself back on the beach. He finds the strength to pull himself out of the surf. He finds a nearby tower that he climbs into and falls asleep in. He sleeps for a while, hearing strange voices in his head throughout the entire night. He wakes up, falls out of the tower, and some kids find him face down on the beach. He gets sent to a nearby hospital. Hospital claimed he was suffering from shock and exposure. The director of a search and rescue team comes in to talk to McCleary. McCleary tells him the story, of which the director surprisingly believes. A news crew also interview McCleary, but decides not to run a story about the sea monster. According to Coast Guard reports, McCleary swam for over 5 miles, and was in the water for nearly 12 hours. Interestingly, the news article altered this fact, claiming that McCleary only swam 2 miles. I have no idea why they would fabricate something this mundane. A body washes ashore a couple days later. It's the body of Brad. Autopsy report claims that Brad drowned. That's the end. To my knowledge, they never found the bodies of the other kids. Oddly enough, there have been reports of similar-looking sea monsters off Mobile, Alabama, which is only 58 miles away. It's a pretty interesting story, and is convincing enough in some ways to make me think that McCleary either saw, or thinks he saw, a sea monster.
B-15. Dad is the captain of a private shipping boat. Get asked to come along every so often. I like it because it's a great excuse to get out on school holidays. Some rich a-hole wants 3 prestige cars broken down into parts, put into containers and delivered to Taiwan, paying my dad a crapload to do it. We get the containers at the port, load the parts, Dad fills out the paperwork and assembles the crew, then we're off. I have a thing for sleeping on the port netting hatches. It's nice and secure. Everyone knows where to find me in case a storm rolls in, and it's comfy as hell watching the world go by when you're bored. One night I wake up, realize I've overslept, unlock the hatch and jump up onto the deck. One of the night watch sees me and waves me over, then offers me a cigarette. We start talking about the sea, my dad, and what kind of rich small-dicked damn clown would order prestige cars. I saw this blue light in the distance and pointed it out to him. We had no idea what it was, so we just watched it for a while. It looked stationary and it was well out of the way of our course, so we didn't see the point in alerting everyone. Suddenly the light disappears. Then we see a huge light zip out of the ocean and off into the clouds. A massive boom followed it, and after what sounded like a rocket being launched. Now kid, believe me, you don't want to go telling people about shit like that. At best people will think you're nuts, at worst. We just saw something some powerful people didn't want us to see. I think it's time you went to bed.
This next story is from my buddy. He heard it from a guy who heard it from another guy who heard it from another guy, so take it with a heavy grain of salt. This guy is doing a dive. Depth, location, what he was doing never got specified. Just that he was really deep. He starts hearing this odd noise that gets associated with the carpet a lot. The way he described was similar to that video of the bloop star. Ultra low pitch, sort of like a super creepy distorted whale song. As he gets closer he hears this almost static crackling noise as well. The way he described it was like a million prawns getting cracked open at once, if that makes any difference. As he gets closer to the bottom, the noises are getting louder and louder. At this point he was thinking that he's hearing some sort of sonar from a submarine and that some jackass submarine crew is playing a joke on him. When the guy gets to the bottom he shines his light around, trying to find whatever he's looking for. And what he was that the seafloor had literally come to life and was crawling past him. This is probably the best description of the carpet you're going to get. According to this guy, carpet is at least a mile long / wide. Made mostly of these strange black feelers that apparently make the strange popping noise. Most of the top is covered in various sand, rocks, debris, with feelers poking through. Also a few long transparent stalks, as he described them, that float upwards. Apparently some of these were like 20 feet long. According to the guy it was singing, which doesn't make any damn sense to me, but whatever. Guy swam back up to the surface and claimed he had an equipment malfunction. Came back down a couple hours later and got there just in time to see the last of the thing disappear. Apparently it stretched as far as the eye could see. Which isn't that far at the bottom of the ocean, but still. This one is an old urban legend that's been floating around the diving community for years. Never heard a concrete source of it, so it probably never happened. Especially since it involves a submarine crew, so I'm not sure how a diver would have heard about it, since as far as I know submarine crews usually stay inside their ship. Anyway, here goes. Submarine is doing something, either war games, or patrolling for Chinese, Russian, North Korean and bad guy submarines. The story isn't terribly consistent about this, I hear it different every single time. For whatever reason, they are not using active sonar because they want to avoid detection, floating dead somewhere a couple hundred meters off the seafloor. They're just sitting there, chilling and listening with their sensors trying to detect enemy submarines or whatever, when they start hearing the noise. Their sensors can't make any sense of it, and it's getting louder at an alarming rate. Starts out as something only the sensors can hear, but before long the entire crew is hearing this strange, distorted humming/singing that people always associate with the carpet. Captain thinks the only explanation is that it's some sort of new sonar/jamming technology and order the sonar crew to send out a ping to locate the source of the noise. This is the part of the story that stays the most consistent, I assume because it's the most memorable. The sonar operator shouts out new sonar contact, bearing. Sir. What's our depth? The captain replies, 500 meters or whatever depth the submarine is supposed to be at. The sonar operator replies. But sir, the sonar says the seafloor is 10 meters below us. The captain says that's nonsense, then walks over to the sonar station. Checks the reading, then walks over to the helmsman and checks the depth. Checks the nautical charts for where they are. Somehow apparently, the ocean has gotten about 200 meters shallower. His theory is that the carpet is basically the siphonophore equivalent of a Russian nesting doll. Rather than being a colony of individual cells, it is a colony of individual multicellular siphonophores and is therefore the missing link between single-celled life and complex multicellular life. The bloop noise which the carpet apparently makes is actually millions of these creatures communicating in their own primitive language. Since siphonophores can reproduce asexually, he envisions the carpet as constantly evolving in size and shape depending on the environment and amount of food it can consume. So perhaps after consuming the carcass of a very large creature like a whale or a giant squid, it would be extremely large and have a large amount of cells but would eventually shrink as itself consumed unneeded cells. The multicellular structure of the carpet serves a twofold purpose, both serving as a distraction from potential predators similar to a lizard losing its tail while running away, and a long-term storage of nutrients. Since big meals are few and far between at the bottom of the ocean, the carpet stores the energy it consumes by creating more cells and growing larger, which it will consume between meals whenever it needs energy. Not just that, but he's very convinced that the very first forms of life on Earth evolved in the deep ocean near volcanic vents, making the carpet the oldest existing form of life on the planet by far. He talked my ear off for a while, but I don't have much more interesting to tell you guys other than this for now. Though I feel that even though this is /x/ and people come here to hear about supernatural/weird stories and crap, this is just the hypothesis of one guy who apparently saw the carpet once. It's by no means the definitive truth, and this guy hasn't ever actually been able to perform a real scientific study on it. He just saw it once and is drawing conclusions from what little knowledge he has.
Here I will leave you one before I go. Be me. Walking around ship. Be night out. It's absolutely amazing to be outside in the middle of nowhere, with just the light of the moon. Look off into distance. See something. Can't quite make it out. Ask Cap if radar sees it. Says nope, but he sees something too. We both concluded it looked like a ship. Tried a spotlight, too far. Tried air horn/speaker. Hello, anyone out there? You guys having trouble? Loud clanks echo. It's not Morse, just banging. Ask for Morse. More banging still, no Morse code though. We try to keep distance in case it's a trap. The banging stops and now we hear what sounds like a full crew going into battle stations, which is weird because it's a 100 to 200 foot boat at most, but we are at a distance and this could have just be echoes. We finally get close enough to shine light. Just a lost boat, probably found its way there because a rope snapped. Upon closer inspection it looks ages old. Paint is basically stripped, holes everywhere. I dated it maybe to the 1900s. What's crazy is the anchor was down, but it could have been 'cause rust. We try air horn again. No answer. We try to radio nearest port. Fuzz on the radio, we got through, they said they would come check it out. By the time we got back, ship was gone.
Not exactly security, but I work in shipping. This happened 5 years ago, but it boggles my mind to this day. Be me. Have watch on bridge together with one of very young man, but responsible and competent. Nothing happens. Boring shit you always get in the Biscay Bay. Everything swell. Ub tells me he sees another ship. Look up from console and onto radar, check ACE, and comms. Nothing. I assume it could be a small pleasure craft. Strange, but not entirely unlikely. Take binoculars and ask him to show me. Both of us look where he spotted the ship for a few minutes but find nothing. Tell him his mind probably connected some shapes and it's nothing. 10 minutes later he sees it again. Get kinda rude but check anyway. Nothing, assume he is just over-enthusiastic. Ask him to describe the ship. He describes a huge ship with a tall superstructure and actual turrets. Ask him if he consumed alcohol or other drugs, because battleships are not used anymore and he's an idiot. Hear a ship's horn. Run to comms because I thought I screwed up and there is a ship nearby. Nothing on any system. Ub tells me to look portside. A damn battleship goes past us without even disturbing the water. Maybe 50 meters away from us. Ask chief engineer to come up and look right. He sees it too. MFW, he only tells us to not look at it directly. Anon saw the USS Eldridge.
Be me. 8 to 9 years ago. Be into recreational diving. My friend Dan and I take a boat out on the ocean with our girlfriends. Plan to test out some new gear/equipment we'd purchased. On a scale of 1 to 10 on the nice day out scale, it's freaking 30 to 10. Nice clear skies, shining sun. Dan and I get our suits on, get tanks and prepare to go down below into the ocean. Our GFS stay topside on the boat. We descend, basically start off by dicking around and I make a joke about finding pirate treasure or something. We're exploring well below the surface but there's still light, mostly getting a sight of the sea life. Schools upon schools of fish. Not gonna lie, things was pretty cash. But that suddenly changes when the fish all begin dispersing frantically. They're noping right the hell out. We start to think, oh crap, a big OL shark is nearby. Dan and I get a brief glimpse of a shadow above us. This freaking thing is no damn shark. It's more cylindrical, fast, it swam right above us. Want to freak the hell out but can't as that would be potentially dangerous. We look above us to see if we could get a better view. Don't entirely have to, this thing noticed us. Imagine your traditional Chinese dragon, now add fins/flippers in place of arms, has reptile-esque facial features. All in all, Dan and I are at a loss, this is a real-life sea monster. It eyes us for a few seconds, then snaps its jaws at us, like a kind of warning before it swims off in another direction. Dan and I use this as an opportunity to swim back up to the surface. We get back on the boat, begin swearing and screaming and freaking the ever-living crap out. The girls had seen some sort of dark outline sometime prior to our sighting. We nope the hell out of that particular area, get back to the marina, and swear to never tell anyone what happened. Still dived, still do so in the ocean waters. But man, that entire day messed me right up.
I told this to a handful of people right after it happened. None of them believed me, so I just never told the story again. But screw it. I'm a little tipsy. 14 years old. Friend's birthday, he decides he wants to go to the beach. Like 10 of us kids there, my parents are the only ones who couldn't make it. Swimming close to the shore. My friend calls to me and says we're about to eat. They brought a grill and made hot dogs and burgers. Sounds goodman.png. I start swimming back when a mist suddenly rises. Can't see a damn thing. Oh crap. Desperately swimming now. I should be back already but it's like I'm getting nowhere. Oh damn, I'm gonna die. Suddenly feel someone grab my hand and begin to tug. Freak out at first thinking some sea creature is dragging me away forever. Suddenly smell something sweet and feel calm. I let myself get pulled for what feels like a long way. Mist suddenly dissipates. Feel the hand let go of mine. I can see the shore and there are lots of people standing there. Swim back. Friends and adults are all freaked out and my friend is crying. Apparently I was missing for about an hour. Everyone was eating so nobody noticed at first until my best friend asked where I was. Still not sure what TF happened or what the smell was. It smelled really pleasant like when you walk into a coffee shop but not the same sort of smell.
I think we should send someone like a criminal on death row on a small boat and paddle him out to approximately the deepest area of the ocean. We will then lower him slowly through the water, with only very strained oxygen supplies. He will be forced to go through evolution in order to adapt to his new circumstances, and once he is able to successfully survive in the water, we can lower him into areas with higher pressure. Ideally he should stay in the area right where the pressure is strong enough to hurt him, but not strong enough to squish him, so his body is able to adapt and evolve in order to meet the circumstances for survival. Once he is able to survive in high pressure, slowly lower him down and dim his light source. Eventually his eyes will adapt and he will achieve the ability to see in the dark. We can then get this criminal to document what is in the darker areas of the ocean normal humans cannot yet traverse. Now I'm sure this idea is not unique to me, and I can see why. There are many problems in carrying out this plan. It would, for one, take a lot of time and resources. I'm not sure which company would be willing to sponsor this. Human rights groups would call it an unethical treatment of a criminal and demand it be stopped. It would take a lot of time to let the criminal evolve and adapt, at least a few months just for him to adapt to underwater breathing. A lot of details such as how we can keep the criminal right at the point where the pressure is ideal for him to undergo evolution is currently unknown. What to do with the criminal once we are done with the exploration? I shudder to think that a creature that can survive undersea pressure and breathe underwater can still be allowed to roam freely, and whether or not bullets can still affect him or her. However, I'm sure that with time, this kinks will be solved, and the mysteries of the undersea will soon be solved. TLDR, let a human evolve to meet the challenges.